The gods themselves do not know how he came into being. I saw him for the first time on a battlefield, a battle unrecognized by history, and long before recorded time began. Not the first, but part of a timeless clash over land, resources, or someone's injured pride. The warriors screamed their bravado on either side, calling for their foes' blood. They met with clashing shields, and the war drums, urging them on to bloodshed. All the faces didn't matter, because the results were the same. I stood watching with the other reapers, some holding their scythes, others had large wings, and some taking the form of ravens. We circled the battlefield and waited for them to begin their killing. A silent concord of preparation. Each of us knew who our target was. We were drawn to them, and some would use offerings or spells in an attempt to keep us at bay. Ultimately, we always reached our target. Both factions ran toward each other, swords raised, and it didn't take long for the first blood to spill, and the introduction to death began. The initial corpse hit the ground, a young man whose skull was cracked open with a merciful quick death. He wasn't mine to claim. One of the winged reapers instead approached, surrounded by a bright light, and landed close by. A hand was offered, and graciously accepted. The pair left the scene to walk the undead path. The battle raged on, with one side gaining victory, and seizing the survivors to be led away to a life of servitude. I stood as a witness to this many times previously. My attention was drawn to the sun. I didn't recognize him as a god of war, or death, nor as another reaper. I could sense something off about him before I saw him, an uncomfortable feeling of an inescapable dread. The son of the void walked through the gore of the dead without worry or concern. The dead did not matter, and not all were selected. He stepped over a dying soldier, who cried out with his hand lifted, and withdrew it when he saw the sun's face, frozen in fear and disgust. Either unlucky or fortunate, the sun left him alone, and continued to seek out the ones he wished to claim for his cause. There was nothing different about them. No creed, no species, no divine birth date or bloodline. He would pause in front of the dead or the dying, lift his hand, and the soul would be forcefully yanked from the offer, or their own choice. The first time he claimed only one at a time, then perhaps two. Each time he appeared, more would be taken. One by one, he raised his hand, and the souls of the damned followed him without choice. He wore broken armor from long ago, pieced together from his victim's own, with the bloodstains of thousands coating him with their entrails clinging on. When they disappeared, I knew it was time to move on. I only saw him when he wandered through the bloodiest of battlefields, once in a billion years, then every million or so, slowly declining in number. He ignored the protests of the other reapers. Few, if any, were able to push us away from our purpose. Any measure was temporary. Spells, appeasement, prayers, it did not matter. Death was inescapable. Once he took the dead, he disappeared, and took them with him to an unknown place no reaper was permitted to follow. I never knew if he was born from death, nor how he was conceived. He would only appear on the battlefield, and I would go wherever war plagued different nations, in hopes of a glimpse at him, restricted not to planets, timelines, nor species. The sun would take all into the unknown land, and still I could not enter. When I was not called to do my task, I would rest, and throughout time I would slumber beneath the earth, listening and waiting. Given humanity's urge for bloodshed, I was never left waiting for long. I would hear the sound of war drums, the marching soldiers, and the preparation of weapons. They changed over the long years, but their purpose remained the same: kill the enemy. Technology always advanced for warfare. There were killing machines that would do the tasks of people, weapons with automatic fire, and it didn't matter. Chemical, biological, psychological methods were later developed, and always there would be a considerable amount of lives lost. I guided all species. Yet, humans were the ones closest to my heart. I would guide their ancestors, hidden through government whispers, and their descendants, evolved and devolved. I could always sense there would be death, even if the victims had no idea it was coming. The anticipation of death felt like a whisper, luring me to the spot, and I would wait patiently. Before a battle, the aroma would be different. Raw, pain-filled, with a fear gripping the air. When I was younger, I would hunger for it. Yet even without age, it grew tedious when many ended their lives needlessly. I would float above, lurking in the shadows and on the sidelines. A few rare gifted souls were able to see me before their time, never interfering with death to come. The sun did not take from every single battle throughout the ages. I remember when he came for one of mine. I came to collect the spirit of a 15-year-old. He shivered with shell-shocked eyes wide, and held a bullet wound in his stomach. Blood leaked from his body, down into the muddy slush beneath him, filled with the filth of the dying who lay around him. Their souls already taken by my kin. His death was long from blood loss and fever. Too far away from the medics, and loud enough for his comrades to hear his pleas for mercy. His wailing echoed into the night while they tried to ignore him. The boy was one of the unfortunate few who could see me.
No.
It is your time. Come with me and you will feel no more pain. I felt him. The youth clutched his wound, looked in the direction of the medics, and it was clear he hoped help would come. I felt a pit in my stomach. I was determined not to let him get taken. You must hurry.
I don't want to go.
The void kept circling me, surrounding me, and putting pressure on me. I saw him watch from the edge of the battlefield, and he walked in our direction. The boy saw him too. He gasped inward, despite already passing away, and I reached out with my skeletal hand, insisting he join me. Do not waste time. My voice distorted, and he no longer saw the human figure. Instead, he saw the skull, the face of death. His hand reached out and took mine in fear. The pair of us disappeared when the son of the void reached us, and I denied him his target. I was unsure whether or not he would be angry at me. Not every time ended this way. Soon, I worried about him suddenly appearing to take the life of one I was here to take. It was decided by some unseen force, even unknown to my kind. I would wait to conduct my sacred task, and hope he wouldn't take them before I made my offer. In the distance, I would see him on the edge of the battlefield, and only taking form once the first blow had been taken. The sun would be a shadow, an unnaturally dark one, and even the plants underfoot would shrink to avoid him, before they too would pass, leaving dry, dead plant matter. He never seemed interested in seizing those, except when they became sentient. He would watch, waiting, and he would walk through the dead. I don't know how he chose the souls. It happened seemingly at random, and rarely he would go after one of mine. A soldier would lay dying on the ground, waiting for whatever reaper, god, or angel to claim them. Sometimes they were aware they were going to die, and other times they were so determined to keep going, even if their bodies were already broken beyond repair. Their goal was always most important. Nothing else mattered to them at that moment. Just a little longer. Soon help would arrive, and it wouldn't be them who passed. They would cry out to gods who would not hear them. Their loved ones. Anybody who could possibly offer some assistance. He strode through the battlefield. Some soldiers gazed up at him, only for him to step over their dying bodies. Most loathed him. Yet some would reach up for him, wanting him to take them. Madness in their eyes, and they would whisper in tongues I did not understand. Rarely the sun accepted, or rather, took any of those. They would follow him with their entrails leaving a long line of gore, wishing for the empty suffering on the brink, and slowing down the chosen, pointing them out with maniacal laughter, holding them down to prevent their escape, and the reapers from getting close, refusing all assistance. Once the sun found the chosen one, selected through his own reasoning, and reached down with an offered hand that was never refused, flanked by those who received the void's calling, and I recognized them from before. Their skin now melted, fused together in a singular moving mass of damaged eyes, broken limbs, and leaving behind a trail of rotting decay. No hesitation and no choice from the one who had been selected. This one, though, he tried to pull away, and the defiance was fleeting. A hand gripped his, and the recently deceased tried to run. His eyes clouded with darkness, and soon followed the sun down a path, flanked and followed by the devoted slaves of the void. I was going to try to follow him again. I had to. With every soul taken, it only increased the power of the sun. The void pushed through from a place unknown to me, beyond my understanding. The pair disappeared, leaving the followers behind. They cackled wildly and burst with their limbs and blood coating the ground, polluting it, drawing more danger and death to the area for the void to consume. That chance now gone. It was dangerous, even for reapers. I hurried. Even my immortal form could not keep up with him. My quest pulled me away from my duties, and the cries of the anguish caused me to refocus. I had to wait for the fates to bring us together. The endless wait for a second attempt to speak with him. I managed to interrupt. He sought another for his quest, and I stood between him and his would-be victim. I screamed at him. Normally, there was a truce among those who dealt with the dead. None had complete power, and none tried to take another's target. Everything was balanced. Not in this case. He looked at me, and his eyes were hollowed out pits, leaking black blood from the bottom, that trailed down his face. It didn't feel like I was speaking with one's soul. His, yet not. He was handsome, a face many would have been drawn to, and maybe that was part of his allure. His hair cut short, easily able to fit under an armored helm. The feeling I was addressing two separate souls increased, each with their own will, and intertwined where their identities were near impossible to determine. The man and the... I was confused at this point. His gaze challenged me. I choked, a mortal feeling I had not felt for an eternity, and could not bear to view him any longer. I looked away, my gaze lingering on the rolling, timeless mountains that time now forgot, and I could not escape the feeling of dread. I felt pain, the first time since creation, and I came into existence. Who are you? My voice quivered. I towered above all mortals, and he stood well above me.
I am the son of the void.
The voice rumbled, deep and dangerous. I could have sworn I heard another voice in there too. A whisper of a timeline that could have been. That should have been.
I'm not his son. I was never born.
Soft, whispered, an echo. I studied his hollow pits for any sign. A flicker of mortality, a whisper of the divine, a hint of life, a darkness that brings balance. Anything. They were empty. I didn't expect an answer. Behind me I heard the soldier rise from the ground, the corpse and soul both obeying the command. He walked through me, indifferent to the chill of death, and followed the son of the void. Those enthralled laughed, taunting me that I was too slow, and my time would come. The void would be my lord. I would be a part of it without a care, not recognizing who that was, and watching his turn back leave with a soldier, obediently following behind him. A puppet following his new overlord. His will, no longer his own. When I claimed the dead, they needed to take my hand and consent to the crossing. This time, no offer was needed, and a simple command was given. I held no power over their final fate. It was solely up to the deceased, and I would take them on their journey, or leave them to dwell where they had perished. I didn't collect the dead that I sought during that trip. Instead, they were left to wander the battlefield, without a guide to find their way, or give them the choice to linger. It was wrong of me to neglect my duties. I followed this son of the void at a distance. Soon he was joined by a horde of the dead, half willingly and others yearning for freedom. It didn't matter. The void commanded all. Some turned to look at me, and others pleaded for me to help them. Even with offered hands, I could not accept their agreement. My whispers, my callings, my inspiration had no sway. The planet was eerily familiar, foreign and difficult for all life to survive, where all things began, and where it would come to an end. The terrain was harsh. The wind stripped the skin and the flesh from the dead, so only their skeletons walked behind him. A steady place with no end. The earth would crack around us, leaking magma from the earth's crust. The dry earth burned with coarse wind that never ceased. Planets, stars, and suns appeared in the sky, circling us. I barely recognized the road leading us. "Son of the void," I called out to him, who stopped with his back still to me. I walked to him. His followers parted and I made my way through them. They stopped to stare at me, and I waited close to the sun. The dead who followed obediently waited, their faces expressionless, and I could hear their souls screaming out to me. His gaze focused on me, causing my body and mind to ache. The dark pit stared where no soul resided, waited and was taken aback by my lack of response.
You do not belong on this path.
What are you doing? Where are you taking the dead? A breeze moved through nothing but dust. An eerie smoke circled us, keeping us all in place.
Why I'm taking them is not your concern, nor your duty, Reaper. They belong to me. They're now servants of the void. Do not get in my way.
His voice low, and I felt a pang of guilt in my heart for not reaching the dead first. Void? I heard that in the past. Not since the breaking of the stars and the birth of the universe. It escaped creation and slowly spread, a darkness forgotten in favor of life. I didn't know how many he had claimed for the void, without leaving them to make a choice. "This is not how it is done," I responded, allowing him to see my true form. A skull, with a twisted swaying gown around my body. Few, if any, could look upon it directly and not shy away from the sight. They must make the choice on their own. I saw old gods and new. I witnessed the creation of the universe and will see the end of all. Demons, wicked gods, the untold terrors, the embodiment of death and destruction, and everything in between. Some with wicked intention, others blind to their harm, and even a few believing their destruction brought good. This being was different. A messenger. A meaning I could not understand. The sun regarded me one more time, stoic and unyielding. I took a risk. My skeletal hand reached out and touched his forearm. In a flash, I saw his life, and perhaps a few images of the one he was supposed to have had. His soul. I couldn't believe it. He was younger than me, but not by much. Born at a time when the first atoms broke. I saw the terrible dread, the void, both born and unborn, the emptiness made real, approach him soon after creation boomed, and the first god died to bring life to all. The god's blood, flesh, spark of life spread wide. He floated through space. The darkness encircled him in the clean slate, and he sounded so innocent. Barely a newborn. The void entered him and seized control. Yet, humanity would sleep for a long time, waiting for the right time to place him. Was he a broken human god, born too soon?
This isn't who I'm supposed to be.
The faint whisper came again. I felt a pang of shame. He was deathless. On the first planet formed, he was placed down as an immortal guide, a sacred infant from the gods, a babe left in a basket on the grass to be picked up by the earliest ill-fated humans, adopted into a loving family, yet the void never forgot his son. A piece would always remain, watching and waiting, appearing in twisted nightmares of nothingness, being drawn in, and losing all semblance of himself. Time never flowed linearly for me. I saw the past, present, and future blurred into one. It skipped to many years later when he was a young adult. There were those who saw the void. A whispering angel warned them about a wickedness they would need to prepare for. I've forgotten his name. He taught them how to create weapons and armor to protect themselves, allowing them to remain safe from the beasts that roam too. The angel, name long forgotten, was destroyed by the void, splitting into tiny pieces and spread as a warning to all species throughout time, whispering to them to arm themselves for a battle that would determine the fate of the universe, future and the past. The whispers are altered and twisted throughout the ages. Some would use it for their own gain, to control various populations, while others would say it was nothing but falsehood. Soon the planet was blanketed by the first metalsmiths, and workers who produced the first weaponry, lost to recorded history. They prepared for a threat they knew would come any day. Yet the angel, now dead, forgot time was different for mortals. They were left waiting for generations and generations. They trained, sang and chanted songs of warfare, and readied themselves for an enemy that did not come. A few tried to forget the teachings and return to a state of innocence. Many, however, remembered the teachings, and not the name of the entity they would need to do battle with. Soon, they used the skills they learned on each other. The clashing swords and shields rang out across the battlefield. They butchered each other while the void whispered. Only the sun's devourer knew it would allow it to feast. The unnamed and broken god forever marked was known by the populace. Fearing his power to drive them to destruction, they opted to sacrifice him to the deceased angel. The void's whispers guided them. The man's eyes could deceive him and lead him away from the void. They had to be taken out. He was strapped down, eyes plucked out, and his eyelids sliced open. He screamed, the last of humanity leaving him, the divine rotting away, his true name lost to time. And now he saw the glory of the void. I saw a reaper. My brother rose to seek out the dead, their first calling, and he went down to guide them to the afterlife. The sun's eyeless face burned the reaper. The screams caused me physical pain, and it was the first time I heard of a reaper being killed. Sure, there were legends, whispers, but this was the first proof I found. Once the reaper disappeared, gone from existence, the blood down his cheeks turned black, and he changed. I sharply withdrew my hand, looked down at it, and I had a lingering suspicion the void would remain. He stood neutrally. Darkness, nothingness, all of these were part of the natural balance, the chaos to the order that allowed the living to thrive. Who is the void?
What is the void should be your question, Reaper. You will meet it someday. The void will be everywhere.
He paused. The closest he came to resembling the human he once was in the past. No, demigod? God? I am unsure. He looked sullen, reflected on his past, and I wondered what he saw during his lifetime. I had a feeling I didn't want to know the answer. What is the void?
Nothingness. It all ceases to be. No future. No hope.
We were warned when time began that sometime it would simply no longer be. He started walking. I could hear the screaming of more aliens, on the cusp of the beginnings of sentience and civilization. Species not yet created, nor sentient, rose from the depths of the ground and cursed their rise out of the earth. I could do nothing. It was not their time, and yet the sun was breaking time's order. In the sky, solar systems came into being and clashed with those who took their place. Armies were forced onto the battlefield. Screams of shock, and the battle was breaking. Swords against laser weaponry, evolved life forms against their ancestry, and the future slowly erasing itself. The dead and unborn would twist, their souls screaming, and they too would join the ranks of the Son of the Void. Worst of all, I saw the end of gods, the eldest beings, timeless and primordial, their power broken, and not passed on to another to take up their sacred task. The return of elements into one form, and breaking apart, had been the norm since I claimed those who had died. Now it was no more. All were consumed by the void. There were few beings who could control time, especially on a scale like this. For the first time, I felt old rather than timeless. When will all this end?
When the beginning ceases to be, and the past never happens, the false gods will not form.
I felt a tear go down my cheek. My skeletal hand reached up, and the liquid rested on the very tips of my fingers. I remembered my birth, far too recently, and heard the sound of the first life form I guided. A small cellular creature, tiny in comparison to the monstrous size some species became, and I led it to where their dying went. I nearly forgot it had been so long.
Patience, Reaper. There is peace in nothingness. The void will grant you no one else to reap. You will be freed from your duties.
Those enthralled by him screamed, yanked and pulled limbs to try to pull his voice from their minds, while others came to the void like lovers, lustful, and they too tore their minds into nothingness. The human and inhuman cries echoed throughout the universe, throughout time, as the sky went black. Light no longer existed, no stars, nor planets, or moons. I could not view the timelines that split. The variation of all things was slowly becoming one singular way of being. I never realized how beautiful things were before, or what I took for granted. There was no debris from space, nor the destruction of the universe. Only this final, barely stable rock remained, and I knew it would be a matter of time before it would be nothing, devoured by the void's endless hunger. I don't want to be free, I answered. Every single scream cut into my skull, and I turned back to look at them. The void's followers circled us. Their movements were twisted, unnatural for their species, and I felt pain for them. It wasn't their time to pass away yet, nor to linger. Let me take these ones, to give them a choice. Let these be the final ones to find peace, I pleaded, stared into those soulless pits again, and they were truly abhorrent. His head jerked, tilted, and his physical form struggled to hold him. His arms shot up from the elbows, his head twisted at a strange angle, locked in place. His right leg lengthened while the left shortened, putting his posture off balance. What was left of the sun's humanity was gone. The empty matter of the void spilled out of his eyes, and the human shell, discarded, fell stiffly to the ground. It still clung on, unable to completely fall away. What remained whimpered and squirmed with every bone broken. The sun spat a mouthful of teeth on the ground. Small twisted boils of black pus pushed along his skin, and the rippling poison moved through his veins, pulsing. He never stood a chance. Enough pain had occurred, so it could finally take on physical form, without the need of meat and bone to contain it. I felt a pull when the form was made. Whole, familiar, and unlike the black holes, to transport matter between different timelines. The planet beneath us fell completely apart, cracking, and the remnants of the earth and metals moved through space endlessly. The planet's 3 moons broke, sending their pieces to join the planet's own, before the outer planets made their unholy journey toward the center. What should have lived for billions more years still loomed, and close by, while the other planets and moons were lured toward us. It would not be long until it would meet its end. The would-be sun, a young nebula, blossomed into a star sun, then a mighty red giant, causing heat to burst out. All this was far too soon. A red supergiant next, a planetary nebula, and finally, a white dwarf. The life cycle that should have taken billions of years to complete. It was soon swallowed up into nothing. No chance of a black hole forming, and leaving nothing but an empty space. The pair of us floated in the air, barely meters from each other, and the meat suit choked, spitting dead blood into the air. Unable to die and lingering in pain, suffering on the edge. I heard screaming inside my mind, as the last of the dead passed without being able to aid them. Bloodlines ending with no survivors to carry on new legacies. There were explosions in the black, the remnants of their light bursting in a rainbow of bright colors. Some resembled light passing, others flame, in colors not yet named or seen. If there wasn't a feeling of the end, it would have been beautiful. I know that's not supposed to happen.
The gods are dying. They didn't expect it, and yet their power feeds their own destruction.
The same gods, different timelines, and causes of time burst apart. I stared with him into the emptiness, knowing what was coming, and feared what was coming next. I heard soft, familiar sobs, and realized that even the Reapers were dying, experiencing a death long before their time, and their screams echoed in my mind. Soon, I was the last Reaper. And that was an incredibly isolating thought. I always had my brothers and sisters, even if we only saw each other during mass deaths. Still, to be nearly extinct was a feeling I guided others through, and now had to endure. Alone. Goodbye, I whispered. Only the void, the sun, and I existed now. The purge was nearly complete, and I wondered when it would be my turn. I didn't scream, nor plead for my existence. It came sooner, unnaturally, and I would go to my death with a stoic determination. A grumbling laughter came from the void, now difficult to see, and surrounded me. The biggest question I had was, why? It could have taken me, and I could do nothing to prevent it.
I am still not yet done, Reaper. There are still the smallest traces of life from the corpses of those I destroyed. I seek them out, and you will watch while I do so.
Cells, or the building blocks of life, were next. Any possible future, no matter how unlikely or remote, was being snuffed out. In most extinctions, despite the devastation, there was a future for another to rise and take their place. Not now, though. This would be the final one. I kept pondering what could have been, and all the souls I could not guide. One question I needed to know. What happens to you when you have destroyed everything? It was hard to see what was left.
I will devour myself, and all ceases to be.
It would all be pointless. Why haven't you taken me yet?
There needs to be a final witness to the end.
It did not make sense to me yet. We were the final three, if you could call the meat suit a person. He was absorbed into the void, and I felt something. He was not yet dead, lingering. If no one is around to witness the end, did it actually happen? The void regarded me, no eyes, and tilted the outline of its head to one side. I wondered if it was considering what I was saying. Did it have an ego? If one survived, there was a chance. However fleeting that new life could form, perhaps I could. It burst into mocking laughter. It echoed loudly, and I realized it was not driven by pride, nor ego, and needed no one to testify how powerful or destructive it had been. The apocalypse was all it desired. The broken god disappeared into nothing. The sun was no more, and I was alone with the void. The last. It stung. I waited for the end. What if you can't destroy yourself?
It is your time, Reaper.
First, my fingertips disappeared. The darkness spread out my arms and legs. It went slower than it had for the others. It taunted me, knowing I couldn't do anything to prevent it from happening, and I felt it all slip away. Perhaps there was something the void missed, something too small or unworthy to notice. Then life would have a chance. How would more be born? I kept disappearing, lost and forsaken, and I remembered it all. The memories, the people, the places, all of it. The void could not take them from me, and in this, they would live forever. My torso ceased to be, with only my head visible, before it finally was taken by the void. My physical manifestation was gone, with only my consciousness remaining. It didn't hurt. My mind lingered for a few seconds before it too slipped away. The last memories of what was, And worst of all, what could have been. And that was how the last Reaper died. I hope you enjoy this story. What did you think of it? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Don't forget to stab the like button, subscribe, hit the bell and leave a comment. This video is made with the support of my incredible channel members, Patreon subscribers and all my viewers. Thank you so much for supporting me. Don't forget to check out my social media accounts below, including my merch. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.